We used to call it the Little Red Schoolhouse, whether it was painted red or not, and we took pride in it. But slowly and surely now, these country schools are passing away from the land. For the great paved highways are biting their way through the hills, and it's more efficient to pick up farm kids and spin them into the big union schools. So one by one, the American rural schoolhouses are being deserted. The country school marms are gone, and the children are gone whose voices once echoed in the dusty playground. Somewhere over there are Georgie Palmer and Gus Gustafson and Stinky Daniels, tearing around the building like mad. And that nag down there was Gray Boy. He solved Sue and Dora Mae Greeley's transportation problem for 6 long years. I can't remember the towhead's name now, but the other was Mad something or other. She later married the rich oil man and went to live in San Francisco. Dirty Andrews and Frank L. Peabody. Frank was killed in the Battle of the Philippines. And Allison Jones. We were all in love with her, and there were 27 fistfights laid directly at her door. Allison stayed in town and married a poultry farmer. She has 4 children now, I understand. And poor, slow-witted Albert Talbot. Funny, though, in later years, he found himself, and he lived to become a leader in our district. And then, of course, but there's the bell, which means Miss Turlock. Miss Turlock, who got grimmer and grimmer as the lonely years went by. Yet poor Albert loved and trusted her, because, you see, she was always sort of gentle with him. But with the rest of us in that crowded little room, she was tough as a veteran Marine top sergeant. Even when she sailed by in silence, there was something just about her presence that could chill your blood. And it was always toward the end of the day when the trouble started. And then even our collection of classroom animals got cranky and tired. Miss Turlock let us bring these to school if we'd promised not to kill them when we found them in the wild. The goldfish was a marvel. He lived 8 years in that jar. No education, though. It did him no good. And when the class got restless, it always brought up the great mystery of how Miss Turlock could see through the back of her head. If you took a healthy-sized piece of blotter, for example, and chewed it to exactly the right consistency, you prepared your weapon with the greatest of care, and then, when you could resist temptation no longer, you let fire. She wouldn't turn around, mind you. She would just stop writing, while the room got so silent you could hear your heart pounding above the ticking of the clock. She would kind of look at that spitball like Sherlock Holmes, and you could imagine her calculating to herself like an artillery expert on the battlefield. Yes, now, dividing the point of arrival by the arc of the trajectory times the weight of the spitball plus yes. That woman never missed. She never faltered, and she never failed. Periscope hid in her hair. Some sort of a mirror. Irish, she would say in a vinegar-sweet tone, you will kindly write a letter for me to your father. You may finish it after school, and I shall help you with its composition as an example for the class. And then, parading around the room, she would dictate to you something like this. My dear father, today, during the last study hour, I hurled at Miss Turlock a missile formed of partially masticated blotter. I regret to inform you, therefore, that for the entire next week, I will be 1 hour late in getting home from school, as I have decided to stay with Miss Turlock. Yours truly, your loving son, Irish. Well, as you sat there, thinking that 4 o'clock would never arrive again, she would generally read letters for a while. Letters that came in from boys and girls who had followed the new highway off into the grown-up world. And then she would be kind of easy and more friendly with you. She would act kind of human then, so that sometimes you might have realized that she looked tired and worn out after the long, hot day. And by golly, you didn't have to take that letter home to Pop after all. It was only after you grew up yourself and found how hard life could be that you looked back and remembered her. And you wondered then about those letters that came in from all over the world. And then it was that you might have guessed that maybe Spinster Turlock, in a way, wasn't really so alone and so childless after all. Well, when the highway came through, our little schoolhouse closed officially at the end of the autumn term in 1940. Miss Turlock was retired on her pension. But you know, there was a surprise waiting for her that last day that nearly gave her a heart attack. Grown men and women trying to wedge their knees under the old desks, but a lump the size of Gibraltar in every throat. And how we used to hate her. Yes, quite a turnout. Stinky and Irish here. He was our spitball expert, you'll remember. And George, and Skinny, and Pigtails, and Susie May. Madge and Dirty Andrews. And here's Allison, whom we all had so many fights over. All of us to see the childless, serious woman who had looked into our souls in those hours after school. All of us gathered to tell Miss Turlock something just by coming to school on her last day. Well, the country school is disappearing. So the one-room shack is fading toward yesterday. Some night the cattle will break in, or a spark from the highway set the roof ablaze, and then we'll forget it once and for all. But wherever the grand new highway carries us, we'll know someday that a part of what sort of men or women we are was manufactured in that one-room school by old Miss Turlock. A homely woman who could see a little further into you than just your freckled forehead and your restless, scornful eyes. Goodbye, Miss Turlock. School's out at last.